Bună ziua, Brașov! Mi-a fost dor de Piața Sfatului. Vă așteptăm încă la recital poetic. Vă invităm în jurul nostru. Mulțumim lui Virgil Oniță și îl invităm să vină aici. Îi mulțumim pentru că în fiecare an suntem chemați la acest festival, un lucru minunat care se întâmplă într-un oraș din inima țării. Un festival de ales prestigiu. Am asistat la toate lansările de carte de azi. Am asistat la aceste lansări de carte. Am și cumpărat cărțile, fiindcă ceea ce s-a spus aici în prezentarea cărților m-a uimit și mai ales m-a impresionat. Ca profesor de literatură română, ca jurnalist și scriitor în țara românească, particip la numeroase expuneri, lansări de carte, întâlniri de carte. Aici, la acest festival organizat de Libris, miracolul Libris îl pot numi, miracolul carte, și țin să subliniez și frumoasa denumire în limba latină, care și-au ales-o ca un îndemn spre esențe. Da? Astăzi aici s-au făcut niște discuții adevărat interesante pentru ceea ce înseamnă viitorul cărții. Și am asistat la prezentarea unui roman, romanul lui Radu Dinescu, segment, doamna doctor, un roman într-o scritură cu totul modernă, care merge pe transcendență, pe trecerea din text literar în scenariu, în film. Eu am venit cu toată dragostea, așa cum spuneam și altă dată, am trecut Carpații, ca să fiu aici la Libris, ca să fiu alături de oamenii, inimoși oameni care trudesc încă pentru prestanța cărții.
So I have to make it very interesting. He said that was the one subject he tried to avoid in school was history. No, he had terrible teachers, I think. Memorize these dates. Oh, that's horrible. And so I would go over and things that he was very much involved. The Les Miserables, the musical, you know, in French, and then it came here, and it was and he was very much involved in the production of it at the Kennedy Center. He marketed that. He's in the business side of the arts.
Publicat de curând o carte intitulată Cântarea Chemărilor, foarte interesantă carte, doi autori, un poet și o poetă, realizează un dialog în poezii de dragoste. Am privit la început puțin ostil această carte, exact cum colegul Laurențiu, care a vorbit mai devreme, a spus, îmi fac mea culpa, eu am gândit într-un fel. Și iată că descoperea valoarea poeziei și la autorii care nu sunt mai sunt la prima tinerețe. Așa și eu am privit puțin ostil acest proiect și am spus, cum să scrii tu o carte care poetul să răspundă? Fiecare poet are universul lui poetic, lucruri de genul acesta, dar când am citit cartea, am descoperit că este o chemare la dragoste din partea sufletului feminin și a sufletului masculin, realizând un întreg. Și ca să nu fiu nepoliticoasă, îi voi da întâi cuvântul colegii mele și voi încheia cu 1, 2, 3 scurte poeme recitate de mine.
Just a little bit north of Paris. And what a story that is. And we were following Richard's footsteps, and then in Philippe Auguste, his great rival in France, and coming down through Normandy and all that into Poitou and Limoges. And we were doing all that. And, you know, it's very interesting. I could write an article. This was just for the second millennium. I could write an article on what did Paris look like at the first millennium. I could do that because I'd done this work in medieval history and academically and otherwise. And I did that, and the publisher, editor said, well, what do you have in mind? Give me an outline. And well, I write fairly easily, and so I wrote the article. And I sent it, and he said, I don't usually take walk-ons, but I like this. And then he published it, and after that he said, he wrote back and said, I could use, I have a use for an historian who can write. And that started me off in my real love affair of Paris, because with the guidance and the backing of this wonderful Mark Eversman, his publisher of Paris Notes, he said, my people who subscribe are people who know Paris well. I want you to find things I don't know, off the beaten path. I did that for 10 years. It was wonderful. I wrote more than 100 articles, and boy, I got into depth of that. I went underground, I went overground, I got to know people who were amateur historians in Paris. I went places that Americans, I was the first American to go down, and the only one, through these manholes down into the old aqueducts. I had people...
Like in Les Miserables, it's the very...
Yeah, the old one, but not the sewers. Aqueducts are not the same as a sewer. This is the way the water comes. And I learned so much, ground up the structure, the bones of Paris. And I learned that, and I fell more and more in love with Paris as I did this. It was 2009, I think. All of a sudden, my publisher editor said he had been doing this for 17 years. He was exhausted. He had to stop. I was heartbroken. I would have no more. What would I do? I loved doing what I was doing. And then I thought, what am I curious about? Because that's what drives me, that's what pulls me, is curiosity, always. And if I don't, and I'm not curious about something, forget it. And he could even assign me something like the Eiffel Tower, but I thought, but I got curious about it. So what am I curious about? And I thought, something that I'm very curious about is that period 1870 to 1871 in Paris. A time of great trauma, and I think we can relate to that today, what was happening. Absolutely. You have Bismarck coming in with the Prussians, Napoleon III, this is the nephew of Bonaparte, made an absolute mistake going to war with them. But the French thought, oh yes, we're just going to march on to Berlin, right? The next thing you know, their emperor, and he was an emperor, was taken prisoner. But it wasn't the end of the war, because the French, the Parisians, did not stop fighting. It reminds me of Ukraine in a way. They held out through several long, terrible winter months of the siege of Paris. They were eating rats. They were eating all the animals in the zoo. You know that story. And what really got me, and going back through this latest book, I was looking at the journal of Edouard Manet, the artist. He was on the front lines. He was defending Paris. He had a gun. And he was fighting, and they had disease going through everything. It was terrible. So you have these two terrible things going on. Finally, Paris has to capitulate under the great guns of Bismarck. A German empire is proclaimed at Versailles. Does that rub their noses in it? They have a victory march down the Champs-Élysées, and the French capitulate. And the working people of Paris, who suffered the very, very most, and had been suffering during the years of the Second Empire, they said, after all we've done, and you give us a peace like this, it was a huge war indemnity. It was very, very humiliating. And so they rose up, and you get the Commune of 1871, which was even bloodier than the terror in the First Revolution. More people died. It was a terrible, terrible time, the French fighting the French. And that was all over this bloodbath. Oh, some terrible, terrible death toll. How could Paris survive? And that was how I got into all these books, because I asked the question, how do you have, just a short time later, the Impressionists, you have Monet, you have Renoir, you have in music, you have Debussy, you have Renoir, you have Sarah Bernhardt in the theater, you have the
resurrection in a way.
Oh, it is like that. And the light coming, and how did this happen? The result, a book. Dawn of the Belle Epoque. And I found a wonderful editor, my current one, at Roman and Littlefield, and she is just retired, I'm sorry to say, but Susan McEachern. And that is my long answer to your question. How did I fall in love with Paris? It's a step-by-step, but you don't just fall in love with the Eiffel Tower or this wonderful feeling of sitting in a cafe. With me, it was getting to know the blood and guts.
the whole thing.
It's a splendid story, and I think you actually do, and you keep acting like a guardian of the memory of the city, which is important for all of us, because I think indeed the way in which we come to fall in love with Paris is to internalize it bit by bit, and this is exactly what you're talking about. Now, what I love about your books is the fact that you managed to paint such a vivid picture of social and creative history, and you simply almost cannot tell them apart when you read. Now, which part of research is let's say, the most interesting to you? Because they actually intermingle, and for the reader, it's just pleasure. It's an exploration that gives pleasure from the first to the last page.
People, always the people. And then I want to know what motivates them, and that gets me into sometimes military history. They can get me into economic history. I got into engineering history, learning the artesian wells and how did they work. Why, how does this work? And I want to know what prompted them to act. And what I really, the way I organized it, I wanted context, always context, but I wanted it from their point of view. I never wanted it from our point of view today. We can look back and say, oh, Claude Monet, he should know. He is going to become rich and famous. He went through many, many years when he was poor and kicked around and wasn't very nice about it. He certainly didn't treat his first wife very well. These are not necessarily admirable people, especially the artists. Have you noticed? Male always, they often treat their female companions very badly, and everything is about them and their vision, their dream. I'm afraid most Americans get to know still Paris in the 16th arrondissement and the left bank. And I've been trying to get them to the right bank for a long, long time. And then all of a sudden in these years, the Marais has just bloomed and blossomed as this great place, this in place to be. And now they've discovered it. And then now we have not only the Marais, we have the Haute Marais, which gets us up to République, and it's spread all over the place. We like to stay, we've always liked the Bastille Quarter very much, even when it was very out. We enjoyed that because we were the only Americans there. And right now we're in the 11th, the 11th, in our apartment there. We enjoy that. And the Americans haven't quite gotten there yet. And the British, I'd much rather, in recent trips, I would say there haven't been as many Americans. And it's mostly French tourists and many Italians. It's very interesting. Anyway, I don't know that I answered your question in that I got off on something.
No, I totally loved it that you mentioned Marais, because my favorite literary address, let's say, is Victor Hugo's number 6, the former Place Royale. And you actually mentioned the fact that Dumas uses it in the celebrated novel as Lady de Winter's
address. Isn't that funny? When I hit that, I just laughed. I thought, nobody's seen that. And that was an in-joke. I mean, they were very good friends.
Exactly, and it's such a beautiful thing, because you mentioned this scavenger thing. It's such a beautiful thing to collect, I mean, for public memory, in a way, for all of us readers, to learn about these stories and to bring, in a way, these people to life, and to see that they were ironical and they were satirical sometimes, and they were friendly with each other. They did communicate. They're not just literary figures on a pedestal.
No, not at all. I also like the great competition between Zola and the Goncourt brothers. And they started out being on top, and then he gets all the fame, and they're jealous for Edward.
I love the competition between Ingres and Delacroix.
Yes. And Delacroix being so cool about it, very much, very aristocratic. And he can't help it.
Are these the relationship that, let's say, you really consider the stuff of dreams, as Shakespeare would have put it?
I suppose they are, really. I would like to take everyone by the hand and take them around into my Paris, and in a way that's what I'm trying to do in my next book. But it's not a tour guide sort of thing. I want to have them get to know, yes, the people in their dreams and their nightmares as well. You know, they had those, the things they are afraid of. There's always fear too, you know, that's prompting a lot of this.
What was the biggest surprise to you in your research? Because you talked about curiosity and about how you have to be curious in order to write about something, in order to investigate, like in a crime novel in a way, you know, everything. Now, what was the discovery that, I don't know, shocked you or intrigued you or made you even more curious?
Do you mean this book or any book?
Let's say any book, but also this book. It would be interesting to know.
It would be interesting to know. I'll go first to, I was very interested in certain people like Gertrude Stein and to find out that she was not an admirable character at all, especially her cooperation with the Petan government and the Vichy government during the war, the World War II or German occupation. Other things, great surprises. I wanted to carry Twilight of the Belle Epoque into World War I, the Great War. Yes. Because I wanted to see how people behaved during that. And I was amazed by the heroism of some of the artists and that Brock, he was picked up on the battlefield, you know, almost dead, and they revived him. He did survive. But so many did indeed fight. And Ravel, Maurice Ravel,
și încă o dată felicitări edițiunii Libris că a putut să fie alături și actrița Claudia Motea.
You know, I mean, when you hear the music, you just...
And he wanted to become what? A bombardier during World War I, and they wouldn't let him in. His health was not good, and he was in his 30s by that time. And they let him in to drive a truck, but he was down in Verdun.
Au rămas la fel de frumoase.
Felicitări, ne bucurăm că ați venit aici. Driving his truck, which he named Adelaide.
La LibFest și vă doresc multă sănătate și să ne mai vedem sănătoși și frumoși.
But these things grabbed me. But Dreyfus, his story. And after all that, he survives. He survives with the great love of his wife. And I was astonished to find out that when war comes, World War I, the Germans attack, he goes to sign up to defend his country. And he is in his 50s by then. He ends up on the front lines himself. These are a great surprise. In the time of the Second Empire, I'm trying to think what my great surprise is. Okay, this is an architectural one or an engineering one. What a mess they made out of some of it. You know, coming down the Rue de Rivoli, which had started earlier under Bonaparte, and his nephew continues it along. And by the time they get to the point about the Tour Saint-Jacques, they realize, uh-oh, something's very wrong. We're off. And it turned out they were off by almost 5 feet. Now, I can't do that metrically, but it's over 1 meter. It's almost 2 meters. That's enormous.
Enormous, yeah.
And they didn't have what we call, I think it's spot checks or spot surveys. They didn't know what the levels were all over. They'd always been very casual about it. I guess very French, I don't know. But and Haussmann comes in and he says, we must do something about this. And he did promptly. And he almost had to take down the Tour Saint-Jacques. And I was just appalled at that. They almost had to take this down, and he rearranged things and built a great pedestal under it. And you can still see around, and that I tell in the book, you can find the street level where the one matched up with, they had to have steps up to the old level. And this is the new level, because they had to match up with the Rue de Rivoli and the Pont Notre Dame to get across.
Yes.
To the other side. That shocked me. What shocked me too was the total disruption and disarray and destruction that Haussmann created, and didn't seem to care about the lives that he upended in the process. This was mostly in central Paris and in the east, where the working men, the poorer Parisians lived. The wealthier lived in the West.
And he had such disrespect in a way, and such little interest in these workers and their lives and their housing and so on.
Now, the emperor thought that he did. He was providing workers' housing, which did not work out very well.
Yes.
Because he was trying to do it, trying to regiment their lives. You cannot go into the cafes after 10 o'clock at night. You have to be back. You cannot drink. We are going to make you into better people. And of course, what they did was you know what they did? They thumbed their nose at him, and they would not stay in these places. But Napoleon III, thought that he was helping the working man. I'm tearing down these horrible places. These will be much nicer. The streets will be better. We will have better commerce. We can go straight through. There will be no more toll gates at the bridges onto the island, Ile de la Cité. Everything will flow better. You will like this. They couldn't afford to live there. So they move out to where? To the outskirts, to the banlieue. And we still have those problems today.
You write and you create this very dramatic, I'd say, picture and effect of these two forces. I saw them as a clash between the conscience of the city, in a way, Hugo, who wrote about it, and who defended the old architecture and who was so much in love with the medieval and the Gothic and everything. He seemed that was the essence of Paris and needed to be preserved. And Haussmann, who was in a way toying with the city and just serving a prince, the idea of a prince.
And lived very well in the meantime and didn't need to worry about it. On the other hand, if you look at pictures of Paris before Haussmann, the slums were terrible and very, very filthy, dirty, and sewers running down the streets, the middle of the street. Remember that
the epidemics,
he not only did he reorient roads straight where troops could march, of course, but straightened roads, made it better for commerce as well as for military suppression. But he introduced water, clean water. And this made such a difference to a city that had never had a good water supply. Yes, it has a river in the middle, but it never was enough. And it never was very good. Even the Romans recognized that. It's both ways. Haussmann improved the city. There is no question about it. But at what a cost?
You mentioned pictures, and what I noticed is that you have some fabulous photographic material in your books. Do you get inspired by it? Do you work with photography a lot when you write?
A lot, yes, and I need it visually. I definitely have to visit each place. I read too many books, too many biographies, where I say, no, that's wrong. They didn't visit the place where this person lived. They would have known better. And sometimes it doesn't make any difference. Sometimes there's nothing left. And sometimes it can, and I can't think of a good example right now, but sometimes it makes a great deal of difference where somebody lived. The Goncourts, the fact that they lived right across, they moved to this beautiful new place in the outskirts of Paris, and they had the Petite Ceinture coming right through their backyard. And if you go and look at the Petite Ceinture, which is that little railway that circled Paris, originally to be a military supply to the Tiers Fortif, and then it became a way for commercial goods and for people to just get around. And this was rumbling right through the back. And Debussy had the same thing. If you look at Avenue Foch, if you look at his house, and it's very hard to get to, I have to sort of talk my way in sometimes. And he's right back there, and you look, oh, guess what that is over there? It's a Petite Ceinture. No longer there. It's just an abandoned way, except for a portion that the RER takes. But it's mostly abandoned. I have been fortunate. I've met up with the most wonderful Parisians who've let me into places like this legally. And, and so I've seen this. But yes, you see how they lived, and it makes a difference.
And I think indeed, as you said in the beginning, it's so important to have a historian who really writes in a way that makes you feel you are also there, because you can actually hear and feel the slum in which Nerval dies, for instance.
Oh, yes. The slime. Oh, yes.
And the fact that these extraordinary destinies, which are so entangled but so different at the same time, they all make up for the destiny of Paris. And the life of Paris is made up of these little lives that you actually managed to bring together into this very, very vivid book. And I wanted to ask you, what was the most enjoyable part of writing the book to you? The books, actually.
These books, the most enjoyable part. What I loved was seeing how all these people interacted, because so many of them had connections, and it surprised me sometimes. well, the lovely one, Clemenceau and Monet. Here you have this politician and this artist, and they had a deep, deep friendship. Marie Curie befriended Rodin. And also, I can't think of the name of the woman who is the light. I can't think. A light fixture. Anyway, but at any rate, Isadora Duncan and also Marie Curie. Lots of these connections back in my period. Sarah Bernhardt and Charles Oss, from Proust. They just keep coming at you. These wonderful connections, and a lot of these people, in surprising ways, all knew each other, and not just the writers, not just the artists, but there was a cross pollination there that was astonishing.
Well, since you mentioned Proust earlier and all these connections, what is your ultimate Madeleine when it comes to Paris? What takes you back instantly?
Oh my goodness. Madeleine will do it. No. I have to think, because my husband will say, no, it will have to be this. No, it will have to be the bread.
The bread. Oh, that's beautiful. The smell of the bread, indeed. I think you can only have that in Paris. The smell of the croissant in Paris, yeah.
Well, we're getting better bread, and my husband is learning to bake bread, and we do it very nice. He does it very nicely, but yes, I think the bread. There are so many things that ring a bell. That are wonderful. Now, I have to say, I do enjoy living in New York.
I must admit, I've been thinking a lot about what would my final question to you be in this interview, because I could go on asking you about Paris forever, and I really enjoy every minute of it.
Can't we talk again?
Great but I was meaning to actually ask you, what is it about Paris that makes it a city of dreams? What is it that makes us dream when we talk about Paris?
I think it's its beauty. Its beauty and the promise of more beauty. And that was what Napoleon III was thinking of when he brought his color-coded map to Paris. This is a wonderful city. I'm going to make it better. Others did the same thing. Henri IV did so much, to improve it. He had dreams for Paris. And we can't forget that. And so did Bonaparte. He had dreams, and his were more in the center part of Paris, and they're not the part that I like the best, I must say. It's very mammoth and, all that. I prefer things that are a little smaller. But then his nephew did have dreams for Paris, for making it even more beautiful, more livable, more wonderful for the people who were there. He made some dreadful mistakes, but he also left a wonderful legacy. Look at the parks that he left.
Yes.
And people don't even take advantage of them. I try to get people to go to Butte-Chaumont. That is wonderful. Have you been there?
Yes.
Yes, isn't it wonderful? Yes.
Absolutely.
And Montsouris and that, And I love the green spaces in Paris. And there were not really many green spaces before Napoleon III. He brought in the English square or square in little places, starting with the Tour Saint-Jacques. And you have these all over, and now subsequent heads of state have introduced more and more and more. And it's a dream to keep Paris going, to keep Paris at the forefront. There have been mistakes made. Tour Montparnasse is an eyesore. I don't like La Défense at all. I think, why do they have to do that in the new bibliothèque? No. But yes, the dream of beauty, I think. And creativity.